Hello and welcome back to the Advanced English Podcast, the podcast specifically tailored for C1 and C2 level learners who are determined to bridge the gap between intermediate textbook English and true native fluency. I'm Hayley, and today we're going to be getting our teeth into a topic that's absolutely exploding on the internet and social media and changing the way that we look at our own mortality. We're going to be talking about longevity and the never-ending quest for eternal youth. But before we get the ball rolling, I have a quick reminder for you. If you want to genuinely master the phrasal verbs and the complex collocations we're using today, make sure to click the link in the description and download the full transcript there. And even better, you can head over to our brand new grammar and vocabulary platform where you can interactively practice all the advanced terms from this episode so that they actually stick. The link's in the description, so click it, save it for later once you've finished the episode, and you can practice to your heart's content there. Right, so let's get stuck in then, shall we? Have you ever noticed how our collective attitude towards growing old has completely shifted recently? If you take a moment and look back just 30 years ago, grey hair, wrinkles, and a gradual physical slowdown were viewed as a biological inevitability, at least for men anyway. And it was simply just the natural course of human life, something to be accepted with a degree of grace, or perhaps fended off with a bit of standard face cream and a gym membership. But nowadays, forget about it. There's a rapidly growing movement of scientists, Silicon Valley billionaires, and ordinary everyday biohackers who completely buy into the idea that aging is not a natural law at all. Instead, they view it as a chronic disease or a biological design flaw in our DNA that can and absolutely should be cured. And this shift in perspectives brought about a staggering multi-billion-pound global industry. Wellness culture's moved well beyond basic advice about eating your 5 a day and getting a brisk walk. It's evolved into a hyper-technological obsession with cellular rejuvenation. People aren't just trying to stay fit anymore, they're trying to halt the biological clock altogether. And they're spending vast fortunes on continuous glucose monitors, infrared saunas, red light therapy, all in a desperate attempt to optimize their bodies and stave off the natural decay of time. And if you think this is just a fringe craze confined to a few eccentric tech moguls in California, the financial data says otherwise. According to a market report published by Graham Review Research in 2025, the global longevity and anti-aging market was valued at an astonishing $72 billion and is projected to grow at a compound annual rate of over 7% through the next decade. Millions of ordinary people across the UK and the Western world are pouring their hard-earned cash into advanced supplement regimes, NAD boosters, and genetic testing kits. We are obsessed with the idea of living forever, or at least outrunning the Grim Reaper for as long as humanly possible. But this brings up a debate that's currently dividing the medical community down the middle. So supporters of the longevity movement argue that if we change our baseline approach to medicine, we can completely wipe out chronic diseases that plague old age. So think about it. Traditional healthcare is largely reactive, so we wait for someone to get cancer or heart disease or Alzheimer's, and then we spend millions of pounds trying to manage the symptoms. Longevity science aims to turn that on its head by targeting the cellular mechanisms of aging itself and by stopping our biological parts from wearing out in the first place. Scientists believe we can prevent these diseases from ever taking hold. However, a lot of mainstream doctors and bioethicists look down on this hyperfixation with eternal youth. They worry that the industry is heavily saturated with hype, predatory marketing, and outright pseudoscience. With so many self-proclaimed health gurus popping up on social media feeds, selling exotic powders and extreme longevity protocols, it is becoming incredibly difficult for the average person to sort the wheat from the chaff. For every genuine medical breakthrough backed by rigorous clinical trials, there are a dozen snake oil salesmen exploiting people's deep-seated fear of death. There's also a crucial distinction we need to make here, and it is one that top researchers constantly emphasize. the difference between lifespan and healthspan. So lifespan is simply the total number of years that you manage to keep breathing or keep living. Healthspan, on the other hand, is the number of years you spend living a vibrant, independent life free from chronic illness and disability. If biotechnology merely extends our lifespan without addressing our health span, it could lead to an absolute societal nightmare. No one wants to live until they're 120 if the last 40 years of that journey are spent wasting away in a hospital bed suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's. And a study from the World Health Organization recently highlighted this exact discrepancy, showing that while global life expectancy has risen significantly over the past 50 years, our health life expectancy has not kept pace. In the UK, for example, while the average lifespan is around 81 years, the average health span is only about 63 years. That means the average person spends nearly 2 decades of their later life dealing with poor health. This is the elephant in the room that the anti-aging craze often ignores. Extending raw survival without quality of life is a slippery slope that could break our healthcare systems and cause immense human suffering in the long run. So as we open up this complex topic today, I want you to start questioning your own relationship with time. Are you someone who views aging as beautiful and just a natural chapter of the human experience that gives life its precious urgency, or do you just see it as a mechanical failure that we should actively try to conquer? Let me know in the comments. I want to know what you think about this. Now, if we're going to look at this anti-aging craze with a truly critical eye, we have to address the elephant in the room that almost nobody in the tech bro longevity community wants to talk about. The glaring, undeniable double standard between how men and women are allowed to age in society. The reality of growing old is not a gender-neutral experience. It is heavily gendered, and women get a completely raw deal compared to their male counterparts. Think about the language we use. When a man gets a bit of grey hair at the temples and a few wrinkles around his eyes, how is he usually described? In English, we'd normally call that guy a silver fox. He's viewed as distinguished, wise, mature, cultured. Society practically applauds him for accumulating years. Look at Hollywood or the corporate world. Older men are routinely paired with significantly younger women, and their age is seen as an asset or a badge of status. But when a woman starts to show the exact same natural signs of aging, she isn't called a silver fox. Instead, she faces an immense, relentless societal pressure to completely turn back the clock, hide every wrinkle, dye every grey hair, and essentially pretend that time has stood still. And this isn't just anecdotal observation, the data backing this up is quite shocking. According to a landmark study by the Gina Davis Institute on Gender in Media, older women face a brutal form of cultural erasure. Their research revealed that in film and television, women over the age of 50 are systematically underrepresented, and they make up a tiny fraction of characters compared to men of the exact same age. When men age on screen, they keep their leading roles, their power, and their romantic storylines. When women age, they either vanish from the script entirely or get pushed into a secondary sexless role as grandmothers or eccentric aunts. They're effectively looked down on by an industry obsessed with the male gaze and youthful passivity. And this cultural erasure creates a massive psychological burden, driving women straight into the arms of multi-billion-pound wellness and anti-aging complex we discussed earlier. Women are conditioned to believe that their social value and their markability, both in their careers and their private lives, is directly tied to their youth. Actually, a report published by Euromonitor International showed that women account for over 70% of global expenditure on anti-aging skincare and invasive cosmetic procedures. From the moment they hit their late 20s, women are bombarded with predatory marketing campaigns telling them that they need to fend off the aging process as if it were a literal disease. And they're told to buy into extreme supplement regimes, preventative Botox and chemical peels, all to stave off an invisible expiration date that society has arbitrarily stamped on them. And it is a slippery slope, because once you go down that path of chemically or surgically fighting your own face, where do you draw the line? It becomes exhausting. It's an exhausting endless cycle of maintenance that takes a massive toll on women's mental health and financial security. Women end up spending thousands of pounds a year just to maintain a baseline standard of appearance that men are handed completely for free by nature. And then let's look at the workplace, because the economic fallout of this double standard is a real eye-opener. Sociologists often talk about the lookism penalty, where older women face severe age discrimination in the job market long before men do. A study from the National Bureau of Economic Research in the US utilized thousands of fake job applications to test hiring biases. They found robust evidence that older female applicants face significantly lower callback rates than older male applicants of the exact same age with the exact same qualifications. So a man's wrinkles might suggest leadership experience, but a woman's wrinkles are often unfairly judged as a sign that she's past her prime or losing her edge. It is a textbook example of a raw deal. And this brings us to a fascinating, highly sensitive psychological crossroads. Many modern wellness influencers try to reframe the anti-aging obsession as a form of female empowerment. They claim that using advanced longevity science or aesthetic procedures is a way for women to take control of their own biology and feel like $1 million. Are we genuinely empowering ourselves? Or are we just desperately conforming to an oppressive standard because we're terrified of being culturally invisible? It really makes you realise that while longevity biotechnology might eventually find a way to repair our cells so our biological parts don't wear out, science cannot fix a broken cultural mindset. True Healthspan isn't just about extending the number of years your heart beats. It's about the freedom to live in those years authentically without being forced to fight a losing battle against the calendar. So as we go into the next part of the episode, where we'll start to unpick the actual science behind this radical life extension, I want you to hold this gender perspective in your mind, because if we do manage to invent a miracle pill that extends human life to 150 years, we have to ask ourselves, who is that extra time actually for? Will it be a beautiful gift of extended health for everyone, or is it just stretching out this exhausting, unequal circus for an extra 70 years? So this massive global obsession with mapping our family trees and extending our lifespans brings us straight to the actual laboratories. We need to look closely at the cutting edge biotechnology and separate the genuine medical breakthroughs from the absolute hype. And if you want a prime example of someone who has completely bought into the paradigm shift, you can look no further than Brian Johnson. He's an ultra-wealthy American tech entrepreneur who has famously turned his own body into the world's most high-profile public anti-aging experiment. So Johnson spends a staggering $2 million a year on his personal longevity regime, which he calls Project Blueprint, and he has a dedicated concierge team of over 30 medical professionals tracking millions of biological data points across his body in real time. His daily routine sounds like a textbook definition of an extreme, hyper-fixated lifestyle. He wakes up at 5 a.m., downing dozens of carefully measured supplements, eats a meticulously calculated vegan diet where his last meal is finished before noon, and adheres to a rigid mathematical sleep schedule. He's even experimented with unproven, highly controversial alternative treatments, such as infusing himself with his own son's blood plasma in a desperate attempt to rejuvenate his tissues. He bypasses his own brain's desires entirely, treating normal human cravings or biological urges as system errors, and delegating his health decisions completely to an AI algorithm. His ultimate slogan is a simple, aggressive command: don't die. Now, while Johnson proudly flashes his clinical data, claiming his biological clock is ticking at a significantly slower rate and that his heart possesses the vascular function of a young adult, mainstream longevity scientists are highly skeptical. Many top researchers look down on his theatrical flair, arguing that he's peddling pseudoscience and using his massive wealth to generate a spectacle rather than a rigorous, peer-reviewed medical data. And even if Johnson manages to successfully hold back his own biological clock, his extreme lifestyle highlights a critical distinction we must make. the difference between lifespan and healthspan. As we said before, lifespan is just the raw number of years you manage to keep breathing. Healthspan is the number of years you spend actively living a good life, vibrant life, free from chronic illness. And if biotechnology just extends our survival without addressing the underlying vulnerabilities of old age, it could lead to a complete nightmare. The biohacking industry is currently experiencing a massive science problem. We're seeing a $450 billion wellness market that routinely sells hope in a bottle, capitalizing on our deepest existential anxieties. For instance, a highly publicized scientific article recently quietly devastated one of the most popular anti-aging longevity supplements on the market. The compound had been aggressively endorsed by digital health gurus, backed by millions in venture capital, and featured on countless wellness podcasts. Yet, when put through a rigorous placebo-controlled human trial, the results were completely unambiguous. It did not work at all. It produced absolutely no measurable effect on human biological markers. And the tragic reality is that the vast majority of those exotic anti-aging molecules showed immense promise in animal studies, but mice are not humans. The failure rate for longevity interventions moving from rodent studies to human clinical trials is over 90%. The industry makes its money in that exact gap, selling unproven compounds at premium prices long before the evidence can catch up with the sales pitch. So when we look closely at the science of radical life extension, we have to keep our wits about us. We have to question whether we're looking at a genuine revolution in human health or a hyper-monetized distraction from the basic free habits that actually keep us alive, like quality sleep, regular exercise, and strong community connections. Right, so let's take a step back from the crazy world of Silicon Valley laboratories and look at the actual societal fallout of all of this. Because let's be honest, whenever these billionaire tech bros start preaching about radical life extension, they always conveniently ignore the elephant in the room. They're acting as if living until 130 is just this beautiful, uncomplicated victory for humanity. If you actually stop and think about the macroeconomics of the world, where people simply refuse to grow old and die, you realize very quickly that we're looking at a total ethical minefield. First off, let's talk about the obvious thing: retirement and state pensions. Our entire modern society is built on a specific generational cycle. You enter the workforce in your 20s, you work hard, you pay your taxes, and then you retire in your mid-60s, freeing up your job for the next generation. The system only ticks over because pension funds can calculate exactly how many years a person is likely to draw money before they eventually kick the bucket. But if the average lifespan suddenly shoots up to 130 or 140 years old, the whole financial house of cards is going to fall through. No state on earth can afford to support generations of centenarians drawing pensions for 60 years straight. And if governments try to stretch the system to cover it, the retirement age will have to skyrocket to 95 to 100. Talk about a raw deal for the youth. Imagine grinding away at a desk for 3/4 of a century just to pay for an army of immortal retirees who refuse to make way. And it's not just about money, it's about societal stagnation. If people stop aging, they're also going to stop stepping down from positions of power. Think about politics, academia, or corporate hierarchy. Right now, we're already complaining about a gerontocracy, a society run by old people who are completely out of touch with modern reality. Now multiply that by an extra 50 years. If the top CEOs, politicians, and judges live healthily until 110, they will hold on to their power and their housing wealth and their societal influence indefinitely. Younger generations will be completely locked out of the system. They won't be able to buy homes because the elderly will never sell, and they will be effectively forced to play second fiddle for the first 80 years of their lives. It will completely freeze social progress. Once you start messing with the natural demographic turnover of the planet, you quickly realize you are playing with fire. If the birth rate stays the same, while the death rate completely plummets, overpopulation will quickly cease to be a distant theory and become a brutal everyday reality. we will face an absolute crunch on global resources, water, and green spaces. Are we going to enforce global caps on having children just so a few wealthy generations can stay young forever? It's a terrifying thought. And when you look at it through this lens, radical life extension is a double-edged sword. Yes, on an individual level, we all want more time with our loved ones. We all want to fight off chronic illness. But on a collective level, death is actually an essential biological design feature that keeps our species moving forward. New generations bring fresh ideas, cultural revolutions, the necessary energy to fix the mistakes of the past. If we artificially freeze that cycle, we risk creating a stagnant, top-heavy world that is completely paralysed by its own history. So where do we actually draw the line here? Is the pursuit of eternal youth a fundamental human right, or is it a selfish obsession that will ultimately ruin the world for our children? So as we move to the final section, we're going to get straight into this chasm of wealth equality, because let's face it, these advanced genetic therapies and cellular treatments are not going to be handed out for free by the NHS. We need to look at the terrifying prospect of the world where immortality becomes the ultimate luxury consumer good, and where the rich literally live forever while the rest of us die on the standard clock. So throughout the entirety of human history, death has always been recognised as the great equalizer. It didn't matter if you're an emperor ruling over a massive continent, or a tech billionaire with a private jet, or just an ordinary person working a standard 9-to-5 job. When your time was up, you had to face the exact same fate as everyone else. The graveyard was the one place where absolute equality was guaranteed. Wealth could buy you a grander tombstone, a massive monument, a fancy velvet coffin, but it could absolutely not buy a single breath of extra life. But if we look at the trajectory of current biotechnology and radical life extension, that fundamental truth is about to fall through. We're staring down the barrel of a reality where eternity itself becomes a premium luxury consumer good. These advanced genetic therapies, like cellular programming treatments and blood plasma infusions, aren't going to be handed out for free on standard state healthcare. They're going to cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of pounds a year. And this is where the conversation turns into a chilling dystopian sci-fi nightmare. If you think the current gap between the rich and the poor is bad, imagine a world where that divide is literally written into our biological code. We risk creating a brand new genetic upper class. The ultra-wealthy will not only own all the assets, the land, and the corporations, but they will also own the rights to biological youth. They'll be able to continuously turn back the clock on their organs and their skin, staying physically and cognitively 30 years old until they're 150. Meanwhile, the working class who cannot afford to buy into Project Blueprint or whatever expensive longevity regime is trending will continue to age naturally, suffer from chronic illness, and pass away on the standard timeline. And this division would inevitably filter down into how we perceive human value, creating an environment where naturally aging individuals are systematically looked down on. If a society becomes utterly obsessed with hyper-optimization and eternal youth, those who show natural wrinkles or grey hair might be judged as lazy, irresponsible, or just economically useless. Employers might refuse to hire an older-looking worker, assuming they have optimized their cellular health properly. And it creates a terrifying form of biological discrimination, where your very face reveals your bank balance. Many people try to brush this off, claiming that eventually capitalism will do its thing, and the price of these anti-aging treatments will naturally plummet, making them accessible to the masses. They say it's like mobile phones or computers. Initially, only the elite could afford them, but now everyone has one. But that argument falls apart when applied to medicine and human survival. We're talking about the difference between life and death. And if a pharmaceutical company holds the patent to a genetic therapy that halts cellular aging, they have zero financial incentive to make it cheap. They will keep it hyper-inclusive, reaping massive profits from desperate elites who will pay anything to outrun the Grim Reaper. This is why we desperately need to draw the line and establish a collective ethical framework long before these technologies hit the mainstream market. If we don't, we are going to stumble blindly into a multi-tiered human hierarchy that we can never undo. We need to decide right now, is radical life extension a luxury commodity reserved for the highest bidder, or should it be treated as a fundamental public utility? Navigating the future of health, where we're talking about challenging the unfair double standards women face as they grow older, or analysing the extreme biohacking regimes of Silicon Valley moguls, demands an immense amount of systemic reflection. It is a continuous, delicate balancing act between pushing the boundaries of medical science and protecting our basic human equality. And that brings us to the very end of today's episode of the Advanced English podcast. I really hope it's giving you plenty of food for thought, and more importantly, a fantastic range of sophisticated grammar, native level idioms and phrasal verbs to help you comfortably clear those C1 and C2 exams. If you want to make sure that you don't forget any of the high-level vocab, click the link down in the description below to get your hands on the full transcript, or you can head over to the brand new interactive grammar and vocabulary platform. The link is waiting for you in the description there. Over on the platform, you can actively practice, test, and master all the advanced expressions and collocations, phrasal verbs that we discussed today, so they will naturally settle into your long-term memory. If you found this lesson useful and want to support our learning community as we grow, please do spread the love, give us a massive thumbs up, share the video with a fellow English learner, and hit the subscribe button so you're always in the loop the second a new episode drops. And before I officially call it a day, I have a little challenge for you down in the comments section. I want you to tell me if a safe, effective pill became available tomorrow that guaranteed you would live healthily until 150. Would you personally take it? Why or why not? I absolutely love reading your responses and getting into some debates with you in the comments, so please do let me know. Write your opinion there and I'll get back to you. Thanks so much for tuning in, for sticking with me through the ethics and the science, and for being a dedicated part of this podcast. Until next time, keep analysing the details, stay curious, and more importantly, keep on top of your advanced English. I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers for now. Bye.